0, 1. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. We got a jam-packed episode, sure to be fun. We're going to be talking about the S&P 500, giving you my exact game plan so we can make some cash tomorrow on November the 17th, as well as we're going to talk about the key levels in, I believe, NVDA and PLTR today. Okay, so make sure you stick tuned to the very end. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's click on over to TradingView. Again, don't forget, every Monday through Friday, I have a live stream at 9:30 a.m. where I trade off of NinjaTrader because I'm a professional day trading ES trader. Okay, so when taking a look at that, I get my game plan on the SPY, which is what we're going to do now. Now, ultimately, what I'm looking at for the SPY currently is the fact that we have some converging moves. Now, what I really want to see ultimately, if I get my big face out of the way here, is the fact that, almost forgot this time, is the fact that we are trying to retest this low, okay? So the main objective bearishly is going to be this level at 661 and a quarter. So that's the main objective overall. Now, when looking at this main objective, I'm essentially looking at this as basically one big leg going lower that wants to pull back and retest the low, which kind of almost fits perfectly because at that particular point, we could see a reprieve in the overall market and go up higher. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's the general idea for today's video on the SPY. So with that being said, the very first variation is simply that, a continuation going lower, in which we're looking at the market basically doing something like this and going all the way back down to 661, maybe even a little bit lower than that, okay? Now, once we get to that low, it's very important what happens next because 1 to 2, even 3 variations could happen. Now, the first one is subjectively going to be the most important, and I would say that most likely is that it's going to look for a rebound off of that low, in which we can now go back up to the prior high that we basically came from, which is right there, and that's going to serve as a level of resistance also. So we can kind of change the colors up so they don't just get crazy. So that's going to now be the resistance at 675, which is going to be where the market would want to go. And again, this will be a bullish path, so we're just changing colors here, and there we go, okay? So there's going to be the 2 variations I think are most probable for tomorrow as we look to rotate back to the downside and then ultimately look for the reprieve going back to the upside, okay? Now, other than these variations, there are several other ones that can come in play, so let's talk about that. The first one will be the fact that if we continue to go lower, it should be pretty obvious that the market is going to be continuously bearish. And in that, we can assume that the market's going to want to retest prior lows. So don't be too surprised if you see a situation like so. And in the effect of we don't find support, like I said before, at 661 and a quarter, we should be now looking for a market to continue to fall, which now we can look to sell future pops to the downside, okay? So there's a completely different strategy for this one, although very similar in the outcome of a bearish move to the downside, okay? Now, other than that scenario, I think what I do want to cover next is the possibility of a range, okay? Now, if we fall to the downside and we hit 661 and a half or a quarter, and we end up just kind of barcoding down here, I do think it's very important to be aware of that, okay? Now, I'm not going to go through every variation because we'll be here all day, but just know in this situation, because it is bearish overall, you'd like to see a fake breakout basically, and then a resumption back to the downside. Now, in this situation, it's a little bit different because it is a range, and because it's a range, we can now look for how high the extreme went to figure out how low the extreme will go to, okay? So in the live stream, we'll have some sort of range, we'll have it defined by levels of support and resistance, fairly similar to that of this. Again, I don't want to go in too much detail because I'll be here all day doing the next couple stocks as well. But essentially, it would look something like this with support as well as resistance. And then we can just figure out, again, the extremes above, which in this scenario would be this. And then we can figure out how the distance is underneath, which again, in this scenario, it would be like this, okay? So that's just one variation we do need to be aware of. Now, other than that, if we do end up actually doing the reverse, because as you can see, I talked about the range forming down here, we could do the reverse. Now, again, I want to see us retest this low, but I don't always get what I want, definitely. And in this situation, if we do find ourselves just continuously rotating, we will have to use that as very important information. So if we just go back to the upside, we pull back down, go back up, then that is a range, ladies and gentlemen. And if that's going to be a range, what's the prevailing momentum? It's clearly bullish into a range, okay? So in this situation, we want to look for fake outs to the downside and the eventual resumption of the overall bullish trend now in a range to the upside, okay? So very similar techniques to that of which we talked about earlier with the bearish range. Obviously, this one just being bullish, so it's complete opposite. But nonetheless, that's what we're looking at for this overall move in the S&P 500. Again, let me reiterate the fact that I'm assuming that we should be looking for the red case scenario, okay, into that green case scenario, but we can always see different variations, okay? And I will elaborate on anything else and anything that changes and stuff over the live stream in the morning, okay? Because there are other variations. We can go higher. So just be aware that there will be some adjustments if we do. But again, we will talk about that in tomorrow's live stream. So beyond that, we are going to now cover NVDA first, all right? NVDA, let's go over here. Excuse me. And what's going on with NVIDIA? Well, NVIDIA is very similar to that of the SPY, obviously, but in this situation, we could just take the information that we have most recently, okay? Now, we do have to be aware, just like on the SPY, that there's a level of support underneath us. However, we do have a pretty bullish overall momentum shift in the formation of happening here, okay? Now, I do think it's important because that is a bullish move. However, we do have that range that we mentioned earlier on right about here. Okay, so as I mentioned how to get the deviations and stuff above and below, that's the same scenario that we're going to do for here. So we find that the resistance is somewhere right around there. And the support, if I can get that 1 second. And the support should be somewhere right around there. Okay. So we haven't technically broken out just yet. We've gotten pretty close, but we haven't broken out just yet. So we could find ourselves still rotating back down, like right off of this level here, in which we go pretty violently lower. It should be pretty obvious at that point. And we'll look to rotate again, like we said before, the full distance above this line, which would be below this line. Okay, so somewhere basically back to the prior lows would be understandable for this type of rotation. However, you know, truly from my eyes point of view for right now, it looks like it could be a range forming up top. So we could end up getting a stacked range, which at this point you actually should be pretty familiar with what some of these variations are, in which we rotate from highs to lows, highs to lows, highs to lows, right? What is the prevailing trend? It's clearly bullish into a range. So in this situation, we'd like to see a fake out to the downside. And again, a rotation back to the upside. These are all probable statistics on what should happen, which is why we're able to trade this at a high clip. Okay, we don't have to think about it. We just need to see it and trade it. So this being said, if we do get a range, just know that things kind of change and it basically becomes a stacked range in which we're looking to now try to find some support off the midline and rotate back up. Again, same distance above and below. So in this situation, let's just say that's roughly the midpoint. You should be familiar with this. We look for it to go back up roughly that midpoint as well. Okay. So that's going to be probably the most important thing when looking at NVIDIA moving forward. Now, if we do break down lower, it would have to again show us an extreme breakdown, but again, that would basically just be the range rotation. So if we end up going down like this and you see that we've fallen pretty significantly lower than that of the range, because right now we would be expecting a buying opportunity off the low. So what it should happen if it's going to be a range like I mentioned here is that it should rotate higher, okay? Clearly defined by the higher. And if it doesn't, then it will more than likely break down like this, okay? Or some variation like this. And if you get that variation, then now you know you can sell, because ultimately we're looking to go all the way back down through the range low, okay? So that's kind of the distinguishing difference in the characteristics as far as my viewpoint for right now. And there's always a chance, obviously, that we could rotate up higher. But again, we'll talk about different variations on the SPY like that tomorrow. So make sure you join me, obviously, for the live stream. Now, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the last stock up is going to be PLTR. Now, PLTR we've already talked about. We talked about the range. We talked about this breakdown out of the range that's already happened, as you can see illustrated by this drawing. Now, let this actually be a crude representation of what I mean by being nimble on the design of how the breakout happens. Now, in this situation, this is basically what I've been talking about, a breakdown, pullback, continuation. Now, this has gone down a lot further than what normally happens, but this is the same scenario that we always talk about, okay? Now, for this particular situation, what do we have here? Well, we have clearly defined this one leg to the downside, okay? Now, if we use this to define the second leg, you can see that it brings us somewhere subjectively here. Now, the big question is this leg here the third leg, or are we looking for another leg to go lower? I think regardless overall, Let's just say that that is the third leg, okay, and it came up a bit short down here. I think that in general, the way that we should kind of view this is that this could be one big leg. This is one giant leg to the downside, okay? So either 1 to 2 variations are going to happen. Either this is the completion of the move and we're looking to rotate to the downside, okay? Or this is going to be some sort of 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go a lot higher into the low end of that supportive channel, which again, now support becomes resistance. And then from that perspective, we should look for a selling opportunity from there, okay? So that's kind of the main scenarios that I'm looking for right now. And then the last one, just like we mentioned always, the fact that ranges can appear at any point. So it'd be a lot easier, to be quite honest, if we do just end up ranging here, because if we just start ranging here, again, we can just look for this the short sell and go right back up to the prior high, okay? So honestly, I'd love to see a range, or I'd just love to see us just gap down tomorrow. If we gap all the way down into like the 161.50, I'd wholeheartedly like to think that the market would like to see a bounce from that level and go all the way back up to retest the prior high, which sits somewhere right at that 177 level, okay? 177.5. So that's primarily the way that I'm looking at Palantir for not only tomorrow, but as the a few days afterwards follows. So this would be the primary and ideal scenario. If we do start ranging, then again, just be aware that there's changed characteristics, and that should be pretty easy to define. And most likely that would be the same scenario for a lot of stocks and assets for the week as well. So if you're trading the SPY, NVDA, and or Palantir, they do seem like they're kind of similar in setups, okay? So again, everyone, if you want to see me trade this exact same system live Monday through Friday, join me at 9:30, okay? Now, if you want all of the extra stuff that comes with the strategy, the courses, the non-delayed live streams, the feedback from one-on-one, you can see right here our different tiers. Pick one that you like, and ultimately, change the way that you trade forever. Now, again, I know skepticism does come with everything, which is why I have the live stream. However, it is delayed and muted just to kind of protect the core value of my system, okay? So again, come on back here at 9:30, see if you like it, join if you like it, and I will see you all on the next candle.
I know it's hard to trust so-called gurus. That's why I live stream my trades every single day, Monday through Friday, starting at 9:30 a.m. The live stream isn't for you to copy my trades, it's to show proof and credibility that my strategy works. The stream is delayed and muted to protect my edge. But if you want to see everything unmuted and in real time, check out the Discord and Patreon links below. You'll get exclusive perks and the opportunity to learn the system for yourself, so you don't miss great opportunities just like this one.
All right, everyone. So you're going to be seeing a trade that I just recently took live during the stream, and ultimately you can be a part of this too, so make sure you look down below. But when taking a look at the trade that we just recently took here, it was the objective coming in was the fact that we had a really big move push to the upside, okay? This big move to the upside was basically counterplayed by a pullback, and subsequently our entry was to look to get in right above a couple pivots to retest the prior high, okay? So what you're seeing right now is the replay of my actual entry, which was right here at this 68.1925 area. And again, ultimately, like I was saying before, our main objective from this standpoint is to look to try to retest this prior high back at 68, let's just say 38. So what we are looking at right now is my volatility-based stop loss in perfect action, okay? Every trade and every day has a different stop loss based on the volatility of the day specific. So when taking a look at this trade specifically, you can see that we came relatively close to getting stopped out, okay? However, we did not get stopped out, and we ultimately reversed just like we were expecting. Now, obviously a bit deeper of a correction, but everything was within the wheelhouse of what we were expecting. As you can soon see here in just a few seconds, we ended up getting that first target as it hits right there. And then with a little bit more patience, we did end up getting the second target as well. Now, just be aware, after you get your first target, you do want to stop the risk, which is why we did pull the stop up to right around and or above our entry pivot, okay? Now, from this standpoint, again, we were just waiting, being patient. And I was referencing in this part of the video what we talked about in our afternoon game plan videos. Okay, I was basically saying that we were looking at this in terms of that green case scenario that we mentioned on our nightly recap videos, and that we were essentially looking for a continuation going higher. Okay, now we kind of phased that back to where we were. We did have that bigger move that went up, and now this is the three-legged pullback, and again the retest to the high. Now, at the very least, I am expecting it to retest the high and potentially continue going higher, which is why we have those targets above us, okay? But in essence, we ended up getting that next target with a bit of patience. Definitely some patience was required. And then we ended up tightening up our stop loss and then getting trailed out without hitting the extension, okay? Now, all in all, this was a $2,500 trade. So if you want to be a part of the situation just like this, then be sure to look down below for the Discord / Patreon links, or come and join the muted, delayed live stream every 9:30 here on the YouTube channel.